Alors bonsoir tout le monde,
Good
bienvenue
evening, everyone. Welcome to this meeting of the regular council meeting of May 23rd. Before we get underway, we'll start with the opening word or the land acknowledgement. The city of Dieppe recognizes the land on which it operates is part of the unceded traditional ancestral lands of the Mi'kmaq. The peace and friendship treaties that the Mi'kmaq jointly developed and signed with the British Crown in the 18th century apply to this territory. The treaties did not deal with the surrender of land or resources, but in fact recognized Mi'kmaq title and set out the rules for what was to be a lasting relationship between the parties. And now we'll start with the opening word. Dear colleagues, let us have the serenity to accept the things we cannot change, the courage to change things we can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for being with us. So, call to order. Do we have quorum? Yes, confirmed. Just a reminder, if people need interpretation devices,
translation device. There's some in the back just to make sure that everybody understands what's being said here at the meeting.
C'est bien. Alors, ceci étant dit,
so let us continue. Are there any conflicts of interests? No members with a conflict of interest? I think there is someone. Oh, Councillor Godbout. 10.6. No, sorry, it is 10.4, the funding agreement. Thank you. I've made a note of it. All right, that brings us to item 6, adoption of the agenda with an addition. 10.7.1, expansion Dieppe, nominations to the board. So 2 individuals will be named to the board or appointed to the board this evening. All right. So is there any opposition to adding that theme? Supported or seconded by Councillor Turgeon-Roy to add item 10.7.1 on the question. No questions. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The resolution is carried as presented. Item 7 now, 7.1. Oh, sorry, Your Worship. Now we have to adopt the agenda as amended. Yes, sorry. So a proposal, Councillor Lanting proposes or moves, and on the question, no questions. All those in favor say aye. Opposed say nay. The resolution passes. So that brings us to 7.1, inquiries by council members to the Kodiak Regional RCMP. And as usual, we are always pleased to receive Inspector Chantal Farah, who's here with us this evening. Hello, Your Worship, councillors. A few little things that I want to share with you. Friday, we had the honor of hosting a princess from England, and she came to pay tribute to police officers that were killed, Officer Douglas, Dave Ross, and Fev Oshivaudan. She deposed, or she put a crown on the monument. She met with a number of police officers and members of the deceased members' families, and it was very appreciated by all. And I can tell you that it was a great experience as well. Last week, you might have crossed a number of police officers on mountain bikes on the city trails, because we had 6 new officers in training, and the training finished on Friday. And at the end of the training, they went through the city, and it was quite an impressive sight to see. So when the time will allow, you'll see some of these officers patrolling near activities this summer. The members of the community unit also want to say that this Friday they are organizing a kiosk at the Dieppe market from 9 to 1 p.m. And it's an opportunity to come and register your bikes if you haven't done so already. And we encourage you to come out, one and all. The members of the criminal activities unit are they performed a search in a Riverview residence on May 11th. They seized a number of stolen items, drugs, and a weapon. I also want to say that that residence was very close to a school. So the bicycle was returned to his owner, and he was very happy to get it back. And we also retraced the stolen companies from which had come from a Moncton company that didn't realize that those items were stolen. So, and that doesn't happen very often, that we're able to kind of retrace tools. So there was a lot of high-fiving. In terms of drug consumption in public, I just wanted to report on our efforts of the last few weeks. In more problematic regions, especially downtown Moncton, police arrested 9 men and women that were they referred people to community support services. And during their checks, they also identified 3 individuals who had arrest warrants out for them. And these people were brought to the court. And in conclusion, I want to point out that we are continuing our radar operations in Dieppe, and I want to remind all drivers to follow traffic rules and to drive carefully, so that to keep yourself safe and to keep other drivers and pedestrians safe as well. So if you have any questions, I'm here to answer. Any questions from council members? Councillor Lantagne? Thank you, Your Worship. Thank you, Ms. Farah. Now, I received a lot of, or I've heard from a lot of Dieppe residents about thefts of different kinds. And I'm just curious to know, is that a trend? Is it an upward trend? Is it worse this year than it was last spring or the previous spring? Or is it pretty much the same thing? Because I think that it's a growing problem. I didn't conduct an analysis, but I can do one and come back to you in a few weeks. But I can say that it seems like it's usual every spring. People start staying out later. So we have to kind of issue another reminder that it's important to limit temptation, lock your doors, and hide your objects. All right, thank you. Anyone else? No? All right. Thank you for being here, Inspector Farah. And as usual, you are welcome to stay here if you like, but we understand that you also have a lot of work to do as well. 7.2 now, the Tranquille Trail petition. Monique Chasson, I believe, is going to be presenting this position, or somebody else here. Regardless, just introduce yourselves and when you come up to the mic, and so we know who you are. Just one moment. I forgot to turn the mic on. All right. My name is Monique Chapon. I live on Tranquille Street. I'm Todd Pullman. I would like to thank you, Your Worship, and councillors for this opportunity to talk about the trails in the city of Dieppe, and more specifically, the Tranquille Trail. So, like our group of residents see the importance of our trails. Our trails are good for our physical fitness and mental health, and they're an asset as well for drawing other residents to settle in our community. Now, we understand that the city is growing, that there's a lot of construction, and we need space, but we also need regulations with regard to our trails if we want to keep them as an asset for our city. So we wanted to find out what the interest was from Dieppe residents. So what we did was we put a poster up. There's a lot of people that walk on that trail, so we did it on a weekend. We put up a poster and we said, if you agree, we would like to plant trees on the trail, and we'd like to ask the city to help us plant trees and so forth. And then we asked people to sign, and we collected about 700 names. And all we did was put a poster up. People passed by and they stopped and they would sign the poster. So we see that trails are important for our residents. I was also told that there were conversations between members of the council and residents of the Tranquille Trail about planting trails along either side of the trail. We were told that there would be 400 trees that were planted, but that these trees would only be planted once the construction was over and the landscaping was done. So we're talking about probably a few years. I don't know how long it's going to take, but we have 3 meters on each side of the trail, and you hear the birds and it's a beautiful location. So we have 3 meters on either side of the trail, and what we would like to see is trees planted on either side to restore the trail. And we think that 400 trees is not a lot. I planted 12 at our house, and it wasn't a lot. So we need a lot if we wanted to have an impact, we need a lot. And so we find that 400 trees is not sufficient. We need more than that. We'd also like for it to be done now instead of waiting 3-4 years. We don't know, it might be even longer than that. During that time, those trees will be able to take root and start growing, and it'll restore the forest. So the residents of Tranquille Trail have 2 things or 2 scenarios to propose. One, that the city of Dieppe or the developer provide either saplings or trees of a good size, a few feet in height, and we're ready to plant them ourselves and to water them. We'll water them. You need to water them almost every day during the summer. Now, our second scenario would be to add a fence on the construction side, so to create a bit of privacy for the trail and for the people who have their residence on the street. And so I would like to end by saying that we, the residents of Tranquille Street, want to work with you to embellish the surrounding area, and we are proud of that trail, and we have a great walking trail in a beautiful forested area, and this was taken away from us. So we want to work together to rebuild the trail and keep the city of Dieppe a green city. That's a characteristic of our city, and it's very important to us. So thank you very much. If you have any questions, we can answer. All right, yes. Are there any questions? Any councillors? Do any of the councillors have any questions? No? Okay, well, I think the message is clear. I think that's our intention as well, to work with citizens and the developer in question, so that this, as reasonably soon as possible, we can replant trees. Now, I don't know if we're going to reach the number of trees that you're asking for, but last year we planted more than 7,400 trees throughout the city. So it'll be a question of setting priorities. Do we want to plant trees this year? It'll be up to the administration to make that decision. But I'm going to send, I'm not going to be the one who's going to go out planting trees, but we will take your offer into consideration to help our staff, and we'll see, how we can move forward and at what speed we can do this. And we already have a copy of that. All right. All right, next item. Presentation 7.3, a presentation on entrance fees at Doiron House. Good evening, Your Worship. Good evening, councillors. I've come to give you an update on Doiron House, and we do this presentation on an annual basis, or regularly. So I will start. We're going to start about the results of our 2022 objectives, the promotional activities in 2022, our objectives for 2023, the programming that we're planning for 2023, the schedule of operations, the 2023 promotional activities, recommendations, and then we'll end with questions and comments. So, item 1, the results of our 2022 objectives. One of our objectives was to rent out the cafe in the basement. And now, fortunately, we were lucky. We were able to get Café Inclusio that signed a 4-year agreement. Oh, sorry, your presentation is not up on the screen. So.
Excusez-moi pour ça.
Sorry about that.
No.
It's not working.
No. Parfait.
There we go. Okay. So the results of our 2022 objectives. So as I was saying, to have Café Inclusio was a tenant that signed a 4-year agreement with the city, and they've been there since August, and people are happy to go, the tenant is happy, and the employees are happy to go work there. So it's a great collaboration. We also wanted to welcome 500 visitors in the year, and we actually ended up welcoming 987. So 913 were during the summer, and then the rest were during the rest of the year. We also wanted to host 3 events in the barn, and so we had activities from the seniors committee. They started using the space on Monday afternoons, and now they're there 4 times a week. And so now if we rent out that space, they'll go and find another space, but they really like being at Dwaron House. There's also a book fair that does annual activities with us. We've got the Dieppe Library, business meetings as well, and I put a $ there because those are paying activities. And we also held our first Christmas market last December. We had between 250 and 300 people who participated. So it was a good success. And we had organized that in October. Other results of our 22 objectives, we wanted to establish partnerships with local artists. So with the first Christmas market, we chose to do it on a Sunday so that our Dieppe market artisans could participate rather. And so that was a long weekend for some of them. And the artisans really liked participating, and they had a good experience, and they had a chance to go visit the house as well. All right, possibility of free visits for the summer season. 70th, it was the 70th anniversary last year, so that helped. We also did promotion around the 70th anniversary activities, and we raised $850 in donations for Pro Jeunesse during the summer seasons when visits were free. Promotional activities for 2022, I want to thank your colleague Annie from the communications department. She works with us. So we did Facebook posts, Instagram posts. There was a billboard on Highway 15, a bulletin board in the Marsh area, Dieppe Mag articles and insert, press release, the website of the Dwaron has its own website. We also had characters cut out of cardboard in our facilities, and we made feather banners for the entrance of Dwaron House, and there was advertising placed on the back of the adult tricycles that go around in Dieppe. So our objectives for 2023. Now, of course, our objective is always to increase traffic. We want to increase traffic by 25%. We want to do a lot of promotion in the private sector because the tenants that we had in the house are very happy to be there. It's different. It's not a square room or like a box. So it's that clientele that we want to go after for 2023. We also want to do promotion in heritage tourism sites as well. And I'm happy to see that the recreation service will have their employee in place soon. We want to revisit the cafe hours of operation. The cafe wants to open now on Thursdays instead of just Fridays. So they'll be open for 5 days a week right now, but they want to get to 7. But there's 8 employees that are working at the cafe right now. So, and they like it and they want to continue with us. Free guided tours during the summer. Dwaron House signage in Rotary Park, that would help as well. We also want to optimize our target audience. Our target audience, well, there are 3 categories: our residents, our organizations, our community organizations, our partners, and also tourists as well during the summer. And then there are business people as well for the other months of the year. And the federal grant that we received, we had to kind of promise to make the facility open to the public. So now we want to go in and get the business sector. We want to be part of the Performing Arts Network through Radar. So when people are looking for stages or looking for venues, now we've had a call that there's a group that wants to come in March and one in the fall, so that will help us. And as you know, Francofête is organized by Radar as well. So we'll be talking with them about activities during the Francofête. And we also wanted to be listed in the Tourism NB directory. That's another place that people can look for us in. And we want to explore possible grants, so tourism grants, but also other types of grants. Sometimes there are funds for anniversaries of the various Doiron family members. There's a lot of options. So that's something that we're going to be really looking at this year. There's certainly things that we can do in that respect in terms of fundraising. 2023 programming, well, seniors, they don't stop during the summer. They come 4 times a week. We want to do free guided tours during the summer. We'd like to have that. And here's some events that we scheduled. So there are wedding or reception, not just ceremonies. It's complicated just to go with the ceremony instead of the reception. So that's a popular option, and I think it's something that we could do to promote Doiron House. There are other activities with our partners that will continue, and partners that I mentioned before. There are exhibition of heritage collections as well. Seniors are starting to call me saying, listen, I have a collection, can I expose it or exhibit it? And there are things that we're going to be doing with the schools as well. We have slam nights as well. Those groups have already reserved for falls and for fall next year. A Halloween party as well in collaboration with the city. And then, of course, the Christmas market will be back. Maybe more than just Sunday this time, but we'll be looking at the options. There are also business meetings. So we need to get equipment. We had we have a curtain now, table runners, pens, notebooks, promotional tools, and technical equipment. So I want to thank the communications department for their help. And so we're looking, even in terms of technical equipment, we're looking at how we can update what we have already to be able to accommodate more people. Now, here is our calendar of operations for this year. So in 2022, September to April, it was guided tours. And now we don't always have employees available, but our hours were from 1 to 5, Saturday and Sunday. But June to August, guided tours 7 days a week, 10 to 5 p.m. So this year, for 2023, we would like to run from September to May private rentals on request. We can't always accommodate these activities, but these private rentals will be available from Monday to Sunday, 9 to 10. June to August would be guided tours, 7 days a week, every day, 10 to 5 p.m. The same, except for the Saturday until 3 p.m. because there wasn't a lot of visitors after Saturdays, but that would allow us as well to have wedding ceremonies as well. So this change for 2023, if we do this, would result in savings of $60,000 annual and make it possible to increase revenues because students are no longer there in the summer rather. And it would make it possible to increase our revenues with more availability for private rentals. So something to work on. The promotion activities planned in 2023 with the communications department. So we're looking at preparing a promotional leaflet by season. So for the summer, for tourists, and then for business and community partners and residents. And then the other posts that I mentioned before, Facebook, Instagram, and so forth. So really this year, we want to focus on attracting business and more tourism. So our recommendations are to offer free guided tours during the summer season. That's when we get our visitors, the most of our visitors, so we'd like it to be free. We'd like to develop a promotional brochure, establish a partnership with the Wingate Hotel for potential events that we could do at Doiron House. I have lots of ideas, so if we could work with them, that would be great. Continue our partnership with the Arts and Culture Center. That's sure there's potential there as well. And we want to include Doiron House in a heritage circuit. And that's something that we'll be talking to you about later. And it's in relation to the active transportation plan. So there are our recommendations for this year. Any questions or comments? I'd forgotten to mention that you are an international star now. You were on TV5, and that will be broadcast throughout the French-speaking world in December. All right. So we had TV5 from France that came on site. They took a lot of pictures and did a lot of filming of activities. So let's hope that too will help with the Doiron House. Any questions and councillors from councillors?
Félicitations, belle programmation pour l'année, c'est vraiment
First of
bien.
all, congratulations. It's great to see your business model that's being developed. When it comes to making it part of a heritage program, I was wondering if you were having as well the bike path, etc. I mean, perhaps having including but perhaps we might be a year before we see that, where we want to do that in 2024. We want to do that year because certainly that would draw a lot of people as well. Yes, Mrs. Le Boutillier. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. A few questions, mostly for information. First of all, congratulations. Things are on the move. That's good. And for the citizens who haven't gone to see it yet, it's really well done. There's the technology is very present. It's nice to see how it can be adapted to museums, and for the barn, it's great to see what they have as well. I'd like to better understand when you talk about 987 visitors. Are we talking about visitors, guided visitors, or everyone who comes in to go to have coffee? No, that's for the guided visits only. I'd like to better understand why are we offering a free guided visit? Is it because in all museums things are free? Is it because there's no reason for not charging? I mean, there are 900 visitors. I'd like to better understand why. That last week, it was rather last year, when we got to the last of the year, when when we didn't make it free and people weren't coming, so we figure we we I was taking a look at what other museums are doing, and yes, some of them have eh, entry fees, others don't. But what we want is that we can we can we can have other sources of revenues, like a rental, for instance. So that's why we decided to have we want the visits to be free. So we figured let's just try to get our most of our money from the businesses and keep everything else free for our citizens. And certainly the word got around, and that's one of the reasons why we got lots of people, because the word of mouth spread. Another question. In the original business model, and had we already at the time the intention of renting spaces? Yes, we did. We wanted to rent at the time. And I know this is new for renting the barn, but technically the city will be competing with the businesses that pay taxes to here. So are we expecting possible complaints? Are you looking to make sure you have a partnership with the museum perhaps, but are there other companies that could perhaps be partners? I hope we have other companies, because those who want to hold special special events, we can hold up to 6 people at night for up to 60 people with the tables and chairs, and we want to make sure that we we didn't want to draw anything away from other possible venues for activities. Yes, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Lantang. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Quickly, first of all, thanks for the presentation. Of the 987 visitors, what percentage is purely local compared to those who come out from out of town? According to our data from Dieppe, we received just a minute from the southeast. From Dieppe, we had 191 that were from Dieppe specifically. Then we have 331 that would be from outside the southeast per se, and so we had some from Quebec as well. That were certainly popular among them, and also from elsewhere in Canada, we had about 15, and then from other countries, we had 19. Okay, so we're promoting things outside the municipality, I believe. I mean, with social media and all that, we can go get. I mean, the pan, the pandemic had a certainly an effect on that, and so we're going to be working on communications, and if we can have even more promotional activities, certainly that should bring things about. All right, anybody else? I don't see anybody else, so thanks for the presentation and have a great season. Thank you. Point 8. Questions from members of the public. Does anybody have a question? Yes. So please come to the microphone and identify yourself. I am Stéphane Book. I just have one question. We have a group that are here for point 10.1.6 for the. At that point, will citizens have a chance to express concerns, or will this just be a vote without getting other? Okay, we never stop discussion, so we'll have a chance to take a look at that point. Yes, but at this time, so if we have points to bring up for that point, we should bring them up now. All right. So I'm Stéphane Bourg. I've been living in Dieppe for the past 10 years. I graduated in Moncton. I decided to move to Dieppe for 2009 for two reasons. Again, first of all, it's a French area, but also I want to have a family. I always said that I would never go to I would never go to Dieppe because Moncton was better. But as we grow up, our priorities change, and certainly Dieppe was attractive, and there was an enviable place to bring up children and young families. So, as a doctor, I've been caring for doctors for the past 15 years, and I volunteer with the Scouts, and I'm a basketball coach. So, I think it's important that people get involved, and I try to lead by example. Now, I have 6-year-old and 9-year-old children. So, we already spoke. I've seen a few people. We spoke at another. We talked at another meeting concerning Emiro area, but now I'm talking about this area. And development is going very, very quickly. It's great, but we're losing the why do we want to to live in Dieppe instead of Moncton? I mean, well, in Moncton, it's not always that great, but the things aren't as interesting in Moncton, and the bad parts of Moncton, Dieppe has been able to avoid them generally. Here we have the forest, the environment, etc. On the website, we say that it's a great way to bring up spend a vacation, bring up a young family, etc. etc. Okay. Now, I certainly, I think you've been talking about this for quite some time. The concern is that because of these, if these developers are, uh, I'm not here to just talk about the trees, but still, if we just pay the developers to, or if we just have the developers plant uh, trees afterwards, it could be a problem. Before, we saw all sorts of wooded areas, there were duplexes, etc. There were some apartment buildings, yes, but I think that with we can see that things have changed drastically. Those those wooded areas have been replaced by other developments, and certainly, and I mean, if the opera wasn't there, there wouldn't be demand for it. But we have a feeling that's very it's not organized. We put up an apartment building next to single family dwellings, etc. And so for Bouchard Street specifically, there are mature trees of 50 feet high behind the road, and they've all been cut. And this would have been a great buffer to block development. As you probably know, development is enormous. These aren't small ones. The zoning allows for it, but I think we've never seen that before. Yeah, I've asked many times at different meetings to have see plans, details. I mean, everything seems to be done in secret. But what I've heard is that it can go from 700 to two. This is like the town of Caracat within a small part of Dieppe. I mean, that's enormous, and certainly I would like the developer who's here tonight understand that. And we went to a meeting a few months ago. He's a father himself. He has children, and certainly us as well. I think we all want the same thing, and nice, uh, a nice, tranquil area where we can uh, have our grow our families. And we have many people here from Bouchard Street who came here with that idea, and all of a sudden, from one day to the next, we find out that 4 to 5,000 people will be added to our area without any warning, really. And so we have requests, specific requests, because we understand that development is part of the equation. We're not against development, but we want respect to, we want a we want development that is done with respect because we built our dream home. And this one time, when I knocked on doors this week to let people know what was happening, and one theme kept coming up, and I didn't bring it up myself. They said I thought it was here to 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 spend my time here, and it was to either raise my children or to retire or whatever. And I'm here to stay. I want to stay here. Premium housing, uh, uh, nice. And the theme that kept coming up all over and over again is I love my street, but I think I will have to move. So whether you're with the developer or progress or whatever, there's a problem with a development or development approach if the actions, and I'm talking about the developer as much as the city, encourages people who are already set up, encourages them to leave, to move away. I think that's not your intention, Mr. Mayor and all councilors, but that's the end result. And so concretely, we first of all have a dialogue. I mean, we're not unreasonable. We know there's going to be something. We don't want to have just trees planted just to. I mean, it's great what's being done, but we don't expect that. But there's something that could be done. First of all, we saw the plan at 10.1.1, where initially we had been told that there would be a green zone behind. I don't have the map to show you, but there was supposed to be a green zone behind the houses. Now, the new plan that was proposed, if I properly understood it, and it was proposed by the city, is moving that green zone toward the south completely, which means that there would be almost no buffer between 30 single-family dwellings and 7-story apartment buildings. I mean, that can cause noise and for the private lives of people, or the privacy of people. We want to minimize the the damage. I mean, the trees that could have prevented some things, but still, we want to minimize the damages. We want to reject the new plan that was proposed uh, over the past week, and I see somebody okay, put a green zone back in for those who whose houses are right in front of these apartment buildings. I mean, that we see great big buildings, but I mean of such density that we've never seen before. Also, we asked the developers to set up buildings that are not as high, let's say 2 or 3 story buildings, in order so that people can have a backyard. We also want, and this is a request that doesn't cost anything, to close Jenica Street. Right now, it doesn't lead to anywhere, but essentially, if you go to the work to the lights onto Murray and you go to Bouchard, and it makes like a loop. Well, Murray, which before going to the development of Bouchard Street, and Jenica is there. If we are talking about 50,000 or 2,000 people, I mean, we're talking about 4,000 cars, and certainly traffic is a concern. There are 20, 30 school-age and preschool children right now with the houses being built right now, and if you could at least close Jenica Street, there are 3 other exits. And there's some on Yvonne, and there's the light on the Murray, among others. So there shouldn't be a safety problem for when it comes to fire services and others. If you close Jenica, we could be sure that the only traffic that comes in our little family area are the people who work there, the Sunday drivers and all that. I mean, we're not worried about them. It's people who want to take a shortcut. I mean, it's clear that there will be a massive impact never seen before for traffic, as much for Cri as for Dieppe Boulevard. So close Jenica costs nothing. The developer would have more space if he doesn't have to build around that street. And really, if there's one thing we could have, that would be that'd be great. It's a no-brainer. The fact that we never brought it up is strange, but we're bringing it up now. Otherwise, we ask to have, but we want to have the best time to plant a tree.
On sait que les arbres sont coupés maintenant, c'est triste. On a parlé à plein de gens qui
Already some trees were cut, and we've seen many people had cried when they saw those cut trees. So think about your neighbors. As you said, we want to be good neighbors, but we want to have lots of trees. And I have a proposal for the developer last week. I mean, you were able to get 4 extra meters with your exemption, and that was to have the so that the street would go from 25 meters to 21 meters, but it would be nice to have a sort of a hedge. I mean, unfortunately, there's a ditch, and the people in the back, there's very little space for them now. I'm just about done. But if we could have a buyback of that 4 meters that they didn't have last week, it wasn't part of their plans. And I think that would be a generous offer to say, if you want to have more space, buy it from us, those 4 meters, and so that way we could increase the buffer. That's my opinion. I thank you, Mr. Mayor and councillors, for having listened to us. You are elected to defend our interests, and I thank you. Defend us. The developers, the reason why they're there is to make money. On the website of Quest,
proven track records of generating superior returns for investors. Donc, leur job, en bon français, c'est pas de sauver des arbres, c'est pas de considérer leurs voisins.
they don't want to think about their neighbors. I hope they think about them anyway, but they want to maximize their investment. And I mean, we don't want to be mad against the developer. I mean, we're not going to be mad at lime just because they eat limes. But now we are asking you to protect us as much as you can within the confines of the law and avoid that citizens, policemen, lawyers, retired people, doctors, civil servants. We are living in Dieppe. We're not theoretical citizens that will come once the development is done. We are already there. We are part of the community. Do something, offer something in exchange. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Merci beaucoup pour votre
Thank
intervention.
you for your intervention. I'm not sure how to answer that. There'll certainly be great parts of that that are out of our control, but there might be some options to look at. And certainly you've given us some food for thought. I know that our staff are professionals who take a look at those things, and I'm sure they looked at those matters as well with due diligence. And we'll see where this leads. Would anybody else like to address council? Hello, Mr. Mayor and councillors. Hello, I am someone who came back to Dieppe. Mr. Destu, could you identify yourself? That's the first thing we need. Okay, I'll identify myself. So I'm Jean-Paul Destu, 84 Bouchard Street. When we came last year to start and look at where we wanted to build something, there were members from my family who were trying to get me to stay in Moncton. And at the end of the day, Therese and I, we just had to say no. We had to find a place in Dieppe because we were coming back to Dieppe after 16 years. Like the doctor said before me, I took part in just about all organizations in Dieppe at some point in my life. I can tell you that Dieppe is important to me. But now, when we start this type of project, for us, this is something that is major. For the people who say we're making between 700 to 2,000 units, that's nothing for them. That's very little. But when we look at the size of the project, it's probably the largest project Dieppe has ever undertaken up to now. Now, I know there are all sorts of bylaws and all regulations, but I truly believe that this type of project, what we already have in place, 3 meters and the easements and all that, have to be looked at. Don't make me think that when we compare a development when it comes to when it comes to 400 or 500 units, that's a very different footprint than 2,000 units. We went to see the people at Quest, asking them if we could buy additional land from them. And I should say that we will receive very well, all the same. But the impression I had is, listen, we are building a development and we're following the regulations. We're following what the city of Dieppe is asking us to do. And well, I mean, you're just going to have to deal with that. Well, if we can't have the plant, we'll just go build up instead. So the principle is simple. They'll have the number of units that they want to build, which was accepted, I believe, by the municipality of Dieppe. But all that area on the north side is the most important part. There are no houses in Kiev or on the other side, but what we're asking, like the doctor said, we have to have something that 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 has a clear demarcation between the business side and the residential side. And we can say that Dieppe will set up a bylaw for trees, but I mean, they've been pushed away twice. And the reason for that is because there were still developers just had to cut more trees. And I believe that if we put the green spaces on the north side like we had planted at first, and that we attenuate the problem on Bouchard Street. And I'm one person who, with 20 feet in my backyard, and I found out today that for my water, the contractors are coming, the staff from the city of Dieppe are coming to see how we can do something to at least have a hangar outside that will meet the criteria. We don't want to leave Dieppe. We came back to Dieppe and we are members, full members of Dieppe, just like our corporate citizens. But I ask the councillors of Dieppe to remember that that's the most. This is the largest project ever set up so far, and we will probably have to put some efforts to make sure that there is a clear demarcation between the residential sector and the commercial sector. That's all I have to say. Just to clarify, Mr. Destu, the 2 weeks of delay, these are according to municipal standards when it comes to the progression for the process. So we can't change regulations or bylaws from one day to another or the same night. The reason we have the 2 week delay is to follow with our schedule, is to have the opportunity to look at things and receive opinions from different people like we've just had tonight. Well, then I hope you do take time to think about it. Thank you.
Bonsoir.
Good night. Hello, Mr. Mayor and councilors. I'm Mr. Landry. Sorry, I frog my throat. Just to make sure that I'm a homeowner on Bouchard Street and not as the city's legal counsel. Now, when I was looking at the layout for the proposed plan, I think the key, the prerogative is to decide where the utilities, the easements will be. I think that's the prerogative of a council, not the one for development. Now, I see that there's a plan that was submitted with some details. We see that it was moved from Bouchard Street toward the corner facing of the Keith Road. And if we were to move it, there are probably some reasons that were taken a look at by staff to decide that buffer zone, the land for public purpose, be moved. Maybe we could table the request and rethink this, because probably the concerned people weren't consulted, and further, you spoke with the developer, and we're bringing back to this green zone, the buffer zone. And when it was proposed initially, it was going to be a wooded area, and there are probably factors that drew staff to decide to have a green zone, except that the buffer zone could be a tool for council in order to try to attenuate the possible negative consequences. So same thing on my side. I prepared an offer. I spoke to Mr. Harold Daly recently that when we would hear the the chainsaws, I sent an email and I received. I spoke to him on the phone and I proposed to buy some land. Mr. Daly said, "No, we need the land, all the land."
Jusqu'à la ligne de propriété. Elle était encore
And they
boisée.
cut right down to the property line. So there was still wooded trees there, but so it's a bit of the same scenario that Mr. Dassault indicated. And the answer was, you know, we hear you, but we're gonna do what we have to do. So people from Bouchard Street are here to do what they have to do too. And so we ask you to continue that or to consider at least that option. So to consider land for public purpose that will benefit those who are on the other side of the development, Morris Street, but it won't help people on Bouchard Street. So we would take land for public purpose. We would take it and send it towards Dieppe Boulevard, which is a major artery, a commercial artery that should be denser. And so there you go. Thank you.
Juste peut-être pour commentaire de la part du,
right.
du personnel.
Are there any comments from staff? Maybe the planning staff? Mr. Melançon? Well, listen, you have all the documents in your package. The recommendation from PAC is in there, and the information that was put forward today, or well, we can consider it, but it's difficult to do an assessment on the spot and to consider all, you know, the aspects of Janica Street and so forth. It's only by going on site that on site to study the impact of any proposed changes. So now here the zoning permits development. So tonight the purpose was to identify public streets and the land for public purpose to create a park, not just for this street, but for the entire region. And this will be part of a network of trails that will be that will incorporate. But if you're asking us to consider all the comments made tonight, we'd have to kind of table this. And that's one option. And another option is to proceed with reading. The reading of the motion. I think, well, and we're still at item 8, questions by members of the public. Yes, sorry. Are there any other questions from the public? Thank you. Hello, Your Worship. I have a completely different topic that I would like to talk about. If you want us to finish the development question first, I can wait and come back. But no, I think go ahead. I think we've heard everything that's going to be said. But maybe we should allow the developer to respond first. I think that might be the best thing. All right, but don't forget me. No, we won't forget you. Mr. Comtois, hello, Your Worship, councillors. I'm not going to maybe spend time on the technical details. I think it's up to the staff and the engineering department to do it, planning. They can look at the technical details, but But I guess what I want to say, what I want to talk about tonight is that there were things that were put out of context. I think the question of buying land in behind one's property, it's not a question of not being open-minded. It's not something that we're completely closed to, but when we put things into perspective, a development of this size is a development that we've been working on for 2.5, 3 years. And then all of a sudden, 2.5 years, 3 years later, we're getting approached at the last minute to purchase a parcel of land. Well, you'll understand that there are significant implications to that in terms of economical, engineering, financial. So I just want that to be kind of taken into consideration too. So we may not have been the most open given all the work that was done at the planning level. And it's difficult with a project this size to change everything. Now, with regard to a green buffer between properties on Bouchard Street and Keith Road and Dieppe Boulevard, now, according to the bylaw and the zoning bylaw, we have to put fences. We have to put a row of trees as well, separating the properties. And so you'll understand that in the economic context today with market pressures, we talk, this is a commercial development, but we're not talking about a commercial development. We're talking about a residential. The people who will be living in these units will be, people that want to live in the community, the seniors, young families, people who want to be good neighbors. They want to be able to go biking with their children. So we're not going to buy a ton of deluxe apartments where we want affordable units, kind of mid-range, not luxury apartments. And I think that's something that you have to take into consideration. There's a lot of talk about commercial development, but in this case, this is for business professionals, families, young people who are going to be living there, and we see that in our different buildings. We create communities, and that's what we're aiming to do here too. Now, that said, I recognize that there might be concerns from neighbors. We've always been good neighbors. We've done a lot of other developments in the city, Place Sentier on Lafayette Street, Amiro Street, which is just beside residential houses. There's mixed use area, and we've never had major problems to date. We've always been respectful of our neighbors. We've always found arrangements so that things work for both parties. And what I'm saying here is I'm not committing to do everything that the neighbors are asking for, but there is an openness. I'm a little bit surprised by Mr. Dastu's comment. I was on the road when he called me. I met him the same day at 8 after putting my young daughter to bed. And so I think that's a sign of my open-mindedness and my openness to what he had to say. I met with him this very same day that he contacted me, but I understand that he didn't get the results that he wanted, and that's okay. I don't want to get into that, but we've never done a project where we're saying we're not going to talk to anybody. I'm here tonight. I've attended 2 PAC meetings where I've asked, I've answered questions in the parking lot after. I think, you have to take that into context too. The last thing that I wanted to say is with regard to the location of the green space. Now, again, to put things in context, we're talking about 46-acre here, and the amount of space that we're giving for green space is substantial. We're going to be installing benches and so forth. So I think that we're doing our part, and we're trying to make a positive contribution. And I think what's important is that residents that live in apartments, they too want to live in a community setting. They want to, whether they're, they're active or they want to have access to trails, and all of that has been taken into account in the plan that we're presenting. So the location of the green zone or the park zone, again, understand that we've been working on this for 2.5 years, 3 years on it. We've gone through a lot of versions. We've participated in a lot of debate with the planning and engineering departments to understand the issues. And that's after doing all of that we came up with the location of the green space and following the recommendations of city staff. So maybe just to kind of sum up, I understand the citizens that are here. I think that we have to keep an open mind in terms of developers, but we have to put things into context. There is a certain open-mindedness or openness. We are going to be planting trees. There will be green zones. There will be trails. There will be park areas that will be mutual beneficial, both for our residents and for the neighboring communities as well. Thank you. Any other questions? Councillor Lantagne. Thank you, Your Worship. Just a question for Mr. And I don't want to put you on the spot, but people are talking about cutting down all the trees. Could that have been avoided? Clear cutting, rather. Would there have been a way could we have saved like a row of trees? I just want to better understand. I think in the current plan, the plan that we're working on right now, no, it wasn't possible. There was a lot of work done on that issue at the planning stage. Now, could some trees have potentially been saved? Yes, I think so. But understand that in a big project like that, it's always a challenge to know what trees are going to be saved and which aren't. It's difficult to plan that in advance, especially for a large project. And one of the issues is that you can cut a tree, you can cut some trees and save others, but over time, sometimes it's better to replant. So by saving, a line of trees along Bouchard Street, would that have been possible? Or, well, it's difficult to say. We don't approve the construction plan with the building, so we're just at the subdivision level here. So there are things to do, but what is in the plan is to have a reasonable buffer and a green zone and parking. No, but my question was this: could we have saved a strip of trees between the development and the houses on Bouchard Street to keep that privacy? Could that have been done? Had the planning been better, or did you need that land? Were you obligated to cut the trees? Well, everything's possible. I'm not going to lie to you, but in the context of what we were planning, we did need that parcel of land to do the development. But I would, I would be lying to see if it was no, it wasn't possible. All right. Or is that everything for? Oh no, there was that gentleman who wanted to address another topic. Yes, true. That's right. We didn't forget him. Mr. Pelletier, I'm sorry. My apologies. That's why the that's why the director is there to make sure I don't forget things. All right, Eric Pelletier, I have a question with regard to the tree bylaw, E1, specifically with regard to single family dwellings. I'm looking to understand the way that bylaw will be implemented. What is the procedure? So for an owner of an already established development that's not a vacant land, or who needs to cut a tree, or maybe the tree has died, or it's a tree that is threatens to cause damage. What's the procedure there? There are things that make sense to me, but others that make maybe a little less sense to me. So I'll start there.
Nous avons la personne en place qui va
All right,
pouvoir
well, we have just the person who can answer that question, I hope, Mr. Alexandre Truchon. Yes, hello. Your worship and councillors, thank you for your question. So we're working on our communications deals with the communications team. There will be a website to guide residents in making their applications, but basically what it involves is that once you have your construction project ready or your plan to cut a tree, you would submit your request to the city. We would send an arborist or a technician to look at the trees, what can be saved, and to provide the best options. And then once the tree study is done, then we would look at construction permits. And once the requirements are issued, then the trees could be cut if there's a good reason to cut them. But if there are trees that can be saved, then we would recommend their protection as well. Okay, well, okay, but in the context of a property that already exists, we're not talking about a construction project. You know, it could be a project where you're wanting to add a pool or a garage or something. So there must be, I know that there's a construction permit that would be required there, but there would be a $35 cost. Is that per tree, or is it every time I want to cut a tree on my land? How does that work? If there's a delay, for example, between each time I want to cut a tree down. Well, each request would cost $35 for living trees. If there's are dying, dangerous, or trees. Now, it would depend on the frequency of your requests, but you might have to repay that $35, but it's not per tree, it's per file. So we do an assessment. There's an expert that has to look at the trees. And in other cities where this is the practice, the owner has to play, and it can often cost several $100s. But the city, in this case of Dieppe, will absorb those costs. Okay, well then, if the agreement or the request is accepted, then you have to put a fence around the tree, or, well, hoarding is what it's called, but that would be put around the tree so that to protect the roots. But if you're cutting down the tree, it would be up to the owner to do that in an appropriate manner. But we would also be looking to protect neighbors' trees. So if you want to put up a garage that's near the limit or the border of your property, you'd have to make sure that we don't damage roots from neighboring trees. Okay, I had maybe misunderstood that then. Okay, and then for trees that are dead, if it's a dead tree, do I need a tree study or an arborist report or somebody from the city? What do I need? Yes. It's not very complicated to do. It's just that we'd have to check that the tree is in fact dead, and it's just to avoid people using that excuse to cut trees. But we're trying to make the process as fluid as possible. There will be a period of adaptation, of course, but if that's the only tree, like on my property, I have one single tree, and if it ever got sick, there'd be a requirement to make sure that we have to replace trees to make sure that we don't lose trees in the long term. And then I think that what the cost that's would be $500 deposit from the resident. Yes, and that's to make sure that the person would replants the tree. It's a form of guarantee, if you will. If a person chooses not to replant a tree within 2 years, well, then we'll keep that $500 and replant a tree somewhere else in the city. Okay. I did have a USB key. I didn't bring it with me, but I have pictures of trees on my property. I'm very lucky to have a lot of trees on my property, but I took photos yesterday that I can share with the council. So there are trees there that are clearly dead and that are good habitats for woodpeckers, and so I find it a bit nonsensical to have to call a city employee or to have to pay money to have an arborist come to tell me that yes, your tree is in fact dead. You know, for my property, I wouldn't necessarily be required to replace trees because there are a lot of trees already on my land, but I find that cost exorbitant. I find it a little I find it incredible to force residents to go through that process, and also for city administration. These are costs that will have to be paid by taxpayers or the municipality. So another question that I had was, how many complaints does the municipality get? I know that the whole question of development that has been talked about a lot, and I'm not here to defend that, but in terms of private residences and land where there's already a building on the lot, has the municipality received a lot of complaints? And if so, well, then okay, then I'll withdraw my argument. But if it's not something that the municipality has received a lot of complaints about, I'm wondering, why are we imposing this on residents? Personally, I know no one who has trees on their lot that just cuts trees for fun because they just want to spend an afternoon cutting trees. I love having trees on my lot. I do maple syrup every year. I make maple syrup every year with my kids, and so I really appreciate having a wooded lot. And I don't think that anybody knows anybody with trees on their lot that's saying, yeah, today I feel like cutting some trees down. So that's my question. Have there been a lot of complaints? Was it a big problem for the municipality, people cutting trees on private plots? Well, in terms of complaints, I don't have any numbers to give you, but I have friends in the Moncton region who just wanted lawn, and they cut all the trees down, and there were a lot of trees in that area. So the idea of regulating private land is to regulate, once to regulate trees. So when people, the idea is to protect those trees in the city. So existing trees are, yes, they're being well taken care of by residents, but the trees that will be protected in the next development, we want them to be protected. Okay, well, I think with the bylaw that you're proposing for developments, that is protecting future trees, because right now we're seeing developers that are clear cutting, but in the future, those trees will be protected. And so I think that will protect those trees. But during the last presentation, we talked about that you would be receiving about 250 requests a year for that. But if you look at the process, the application, the assessment, the writing of the report, meeting with residents, and then there's an appeal process as well that I have questions on. But if you look at 250 applications, that's a lot of employee time combined. It probably, that's probably 2 or 3 applications a day, and 4 to 6 months of full-time work for one person. So who's saying that there are major costs associated with this policy? We're talking about a full-time employee for 6 months of the year just to respond to those applications. And so individuals on private land who just want to protect their land, it seems like we're kind of walking on their toes. So we seem to have come up with a resolution for a problem that didn't exist, or that doesn't exist currently, and that worries me. you know, it worries me that we're saying to owners that we don't trust them. We don't trust them with their own land. And I think that can be dangerous. But, you know, as I said, I'm not here to say that clear cutting is a good thing, not at all. You know, as I said, I have wooded land or wooded lot, and I'm happy to have those trees. Your Worship, maybe to give you a bit of more perspective, we did research on what was done elsewhere in Canada in terms of, you know, communities that adopted a tree bylaw, and they recommended that we include private property as well. So yes, developers, that's maybe what is the most striking, because we're talking about large surfaces of land, but once the development has taken place and that lands have developed, in other municipalities, owners also do clear cutting. They cut down trees that are in good health. And so our research has shown that everybody has to do their part. Everybody, you know, whether it's a single unit dwelling or an apartment block, or all property owners have to do their part. So the recommendations from the research that we did was to have a bylaw where everybody helped to protect trees. Yeah, I understand that, but I think the only argument that I would kind of come back with is that everybody was aware of the developers who were clear cutting, but the municipality decided to take action. But at no time, at least not to my knowledge, and to any of the residents that I talked to, at no time was it ever a question of broadening that discussion to private land. And I think if you did a survey today to know if single unit owners or duplex owners were aware or are aware that the municipality wants to place limits on existing residences, I think I don't think there was a consultation done with residents on that topic. Now, in terms of development, I think everybody was aware of what was happening. Everybody that wanted to know were aware of the problem. But listen, I don't want to take a lot more of your time, but one recommendation that I might make to the council, and I know that you won't be able to deal with this question tonight, but maybe at the next meeting when you're going to be dealing with that issue, I would recommend, or I would ask ourselves, are we solving a real issue, or are we trying to solve a problem that doesn't exist? I think it would be good to have a 1-year delay to see if there are complaints or objections from private residences or residents, from single dwelling owners and duplexes and so forth. So take a year to see if there is really a problem in Dieppe with people who are cutting too many trees, or is it a solution? Because we're talking about 250 applications a year. If there aren't 250 complaints, I think we're adding an administrative burden and an administrative cost onto the city that's not needed at this point. That's all I had to say. Right. All right. Thank you for your presentation. We will think about this again, but I think the position of the mayor, of course, it's not necessarily the position of the councillors, is that when we do things, we like to do things properly, and do them once, and not have to come back and reconsider things. So Dieppe is a leader in this case, and we've always seen ourselves as leaders, regardless of the discussion, whether it's about trees or the drainage plans. I remember when in 2012 we instituted drainage plans on properties. Developers panicked that makes no sense. You're going to double the cost of houses with that. It's going to create mayhem, and we're going to need engineers and designers and so forth. But we did it. We did it well, and it settled the problem. So, and it wasn't, after we take each thing into consideration, each recommendation brought by staff, and we'll also look at best practices. We want to be the best.
Des fois, c'est bon de prendre plus de temps.
With all due respect, sometimes it's better to take a little bit more time to make sure we make the right decision if we're going ahead with something that take rights away from taxpayers. I mean, which owner, the one who has a house, or the one that just has trees and trees and trees? I mean, he's an owner too, and so we're affecting their rights, so to speak. As a citizen, I have no problem personally with that. I mean, I've been at the same places since 1977. I've planted trees. I've cut them down. I've planted more, etc. Yes, but you are a responsible citizens, and most people are responsible citizens. Yes, well, those who aren't responsible are the ones who will give us problems. So, well, anyway, that's what I have to say for tonight. All right. Well, I guess we're going to be here for the night. Anybody else? Okay, hello. I'm a resident of Bouchard Street, and we're perhaps going to say that we've talked about Bouchard Street, and I just want to bring up one more point. Okay, I to Mr. Control before. I think everybody here, we agree with development, and we're quite conscious that the people coming to live here are people who want to come here, their families and people like us. We have to remember that there are people who choose to live in those apartments. They made that choice, and if they're okay to be with 4,000, 5,000 people close to them within a uh, very small territory. Now, when we bought our property, we paid a certain uh, bonus to that for that. I mean, we we believed in the city, and I want to believe that we can continue to have confidence that Dieppe will think about the new people who move here, but also those who are already here. And I want to repeat that one solution would be to keep Jenica Street closed. So I hope that you will consider what we have to say. I believe that you have a certain word to say when it comes to closing and opening streets. So I'm hoping that hasn't already been decided. Thank you. Anybody else? Would anybody have something new to add?
Bonsoir, Catherine Boucher.
Hello, Catherine Boucher, resident of Bouchard Street. I think we pretty much touched upon everything, but I'm not sure how this works. But I just want to make one last recommendation. I think I heard Mr. Melançon talking about tabling the matter. That would I believe it shouldn't be a decision made right now because there's a lot of thought to put into this after hearing us. So I would like to see if this matter could be tabled. Anything's possible, but it has to come from the council. So for tonight, the matter is, after having heard everyone, we're now going to continue our meeting, which includes getting eventually to that matter, and we will see what has to be said about that. All right. Anybody else? No? Well, then we'll continue the meeting with the adoption of minutes for the last regular council meeting, that of May 8th. Mr. Thibodeau proposes, Conseil Godet seconds. Other questions? No questions? Nothing arising from the minutes? So those in favor will say yes. Those against will say no. The motion is passed as presented. This brings us to item 10 or 10.1.1, appointments of members of council on committees and commissions. Who would like to read this? And you have a supplement to this with all the different assignments that have been given. Would somebody want to speak to this? Mr. Thibodeau, go ahead. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That council accepts the following appointments on committees and commissions for a 2-year term starting June 13, 2023 and ending May 12th, 2025. Standing Committee on Strategies and Public Policies, Mayor and Councilors. Kodiak Regional Policing Authority, Corinne Goodbout. Liaison Committee of the 3 Municipal Councils, Jean-Marc Brideau. Capital Theatre Incorporated, Melissa Boudreau. Dieppe Public Library Board, Jean-Marc Brideau. Greater Moncton Literacy Advisory Board, Paul Godet. Greater Moncton Romeo Leblanc International Airport Community Consultative and Management Committee, Jean-Marc Brideau. Multicultural Agency of the Greater Moncton Area, Ernest Thibodeau. Greater Moncton Santa Claus Parade Committee, Paul Godet. Dieppe Arts and Culture Center, Inc., José Turgeon-Roy. Kodiak Transit Governance Committee, Melissa Boudreau, Marc Lantaigne, the alternate member, and the Agreements Committee of the City Council for QP Local 3515 Fire Department, Yvon Lapierre, Lisa Boutillier, and Marc Lantaigne. The Cities of New Brunswick Association, Yvon Lapierre, and the Deputy Mayor. Expansion Dieppe, Yvon Lapierre, José Turgeon-Roy, and Paul Godet. The Union of the Municipalities of New Brunswick, Jean-Marc Brideau, and the Centre d'accueil et d'accompagnement francophone des immigrants du Sud-Est du Nouveau-Brunswick, Melissa Boudreau. I move, Mr. Mayor. So moved by Councillor Thibodeau, seconded by Councillor Lantaigne. Are there questions? Those in favor will say yay. Those against will say nay. The proposal is, the motion is adopted. And now we come to 10.1.2, election of a deputy mayor. To read that, Mrs. Corinne Goodbout. Here we go. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That pursuant to bylaw A4, 2018, entitled Procedural Bylaw of the Municipal Council of the City of Dieppe, Council elects Melissa Boudreau as Deputy Mayor for a term starting June 1st, 2023 and ending May 31st, 2024. I move. Proposed by Councillor Goodbout and seconded by Councillor Brideau, Conseil Brideau. So those in favor, or first of all, are there questions? None. Those in favor will say yay. Those against will say nay. Passed. Motion carried as presented. Thank you. Now, signing officers for banking services. Yeah. So signing officers for the city. So this will be read by Mr. Jean Roy. Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor. So that Yvon Lapierre, Mayor, or Melissa Boudreau, Deputy Mayor, and Stéphane Thériault, Treasurer, or Marie-Ève Goodbout-Carroll, Assistant Treasurer, are hereby authorized to sign all checks issued for and on behalf of the city of Dieppe. I propose. Proposed by Mr. Jean Roy. Councillor Gaudette seconds it. Other questions? No questions? Those in favor will say yay. Those against will say nay. The motion is carried as presented. Now, point 10.1, point 10.1.4, Mr. Melanson. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good evening, everybody. You have before you a request from expansion when it comes for an exemption to prohibit excessive noises. We have the graduation parties coming soon, and so there will be requests to have a permit to continue until 10 o'clock at night. I think it's a good reason. And so to have the contacts are already made with the neighborhood. And so so my recommendation is to have that exemption. So thank you for reading the resolution, Conseillère Melissa Boudreau. Thank you. Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. That pursuant to Section 4 of Bylaw S9, 2018, prohibiting excessive noises, Council authorized an exemption to said bylaw in order to allow a graduation party on the property located at 244 Yvonne Street on June 17, 2023 until midnight. I move. Conseiller Boudreau moves. Conseiller Lantaigne seconds. Are there any questions? Okay, none. Those in favor will say yay. Those against will say nay. The motion is carried as presented. Next item, 10.1.5. Mr. Melanson. Yes, this is a directive ratification for the purchase of parcels of land on Besançon Road. This was a project that this has something to do also with work that was done on Book Street for water and sewer services. This is to have to make sure that that we can have the work done. It will be at about $60,000 plus HSE legal fees. And so our recommendation was in place, and the people of Book Street will be quite happy for this to be done. Thank you for the resolution to be read. Lise Boutillier. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That council authorized the purchase of portions of the parcel of land identified under PID 7028822 and located on Melanson Road at the total cost of $60,000 plus HST and legal fees, and further authorize this expenditure be defrayed from account number 3335587602, General Capital Budget Land Purchase, and that Council authorize a budget transfer in the amount of $70,000 from account number 7420128920 General Capital Reserve Fund to account number 3-3-35-58-7602 General Capital Budget Land Purchase. I so move. Councilor Boutillier proposed Jean Mrs. Roy in favor. Those in favor will say yay. Those against will say nay. It's adopted as carried as presented. So now we're at 10.2 for community development, 10.2.1 concerning entrance fees for the summer season at the Doiron House. So this is following the presentation by Mrs. Calmier. And so this is for authorization for the. So who would like to read this? Mrs. Jean Roy can read the motion. Thank you. That council authorized an exemption to policy L-1 2023 entitled rental rates for facilities and municipal spaces in order to offer free admission to the Doiron House during the summer season from the first Monday of June to the first Friday of September inclusively. I propose. So move. Councillor Tougeon-Roy, seconded by Councillor Boudreau. Those in favor will say yay. Those against, nay. The motion is carried as presented. And now 10.3, Mr. Melanson. Well, here we have another expropriation at 271 to 275 Gauvin Road. We've had discussions with the owners since 2016. 4 offers were made over the past years, and we didn't get any counter offer from the owner. And it is necessary to add to the densification of our downtown. And so we are going for the expropriation as a last resort. It's now a legal matter, so we can't give more details. But we have to have this resolution presented to go ahead. So to have this read, Mr. Thibodeau. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Be it resolved that the City of Dieppe, having received and considered the report of the Expropriations Advisory Officer, Ms. Sophie Corbier, dated January 20th, 2023, confirm its notice of intention to expropriate, and that a notice of expropriation be issued with respect to the lands described in the notice filed on December 20th, 2022, in the Land Titles Office in New Brunswick as number 43458711. I move. Moved by Councillor Thibodeau, seconded by Councillor Gaudette on the matter. Questions? No question. Those in favor will say yay. Oh, wait a minute. Oh. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm generally in favor of this motion, but I want to say that we have to say that the notice of expropriation, it's an exceptional case, as you said, Mr. Melanson. I think we mentioned last time as well. I think it's in our reports that there was no consultation on that matter. And I think it's important to say that there be consultation, because this really had to be an exceptional matter that we don't take lightly. And it would have been good to see if we could have that could have been communications done for this. So I'm reiterating my recommendation when it comes to that. Thank you. Other matters, any other questions or comments? No, those in favor will say yay. Those against will say nay. Carried as presented. We're now at the next matter was for Councillor Godbout. If we take a look at the minutes. So here, there's a matter of having an agreement with the Government of Canada for a project that was led by Dieppe for trail installation on Fox Creek Road and also on Melanson roads. Going to the Rotary Park in Saint Anselme, and they're asking that this we want to have signing authority. And just to say, we're going to finalizing the plans in 2023, and the construction will be done in 2024. And so to read this resolution authorizing the agreement, Mr. Gaudette. Yes, Mr. Mayor. That council authorized the municipal signing officers to sign the funding agreement between the City of Dieppe and the Government of Canada under the Active Transportation Fund for the trail installation project on Fox Creek and Melanson roads. I move. Moved by Councillor Gaudette, seconded by Councillor Boudreau. Questions? None. Those in favor will say yay. Those against the motion will say nay. Passed or carried as presented. So, Mr. Godbout, Can we talk about this next one? Uh, or rather, we're going on to 10.5.1. Okay, Operations Center, purchase of a generation. Mr. Melanson, as we saw that we have this element for in 2023, as you know, with the climate change, we have to maintain some services, especially at the Operations Center. And so this is a call for tenders. We received 4 proposals, and those that met all the standards and had the best score, it was a Summers Generation Systems Limited at a cost of $90,020 plus HST. And we want to authorize the expenditure, and we have recommendations to go ahead with this purchase. Thank you to read this motion, Mrs. Le Boutillier. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That council award the tender for the purchase of a generator for the operations center to Summers Generator Systems Limited at the cost of $90,020 plus HST, pursuant to its proposal dated May 5th, 2023, and authorize this expenditure to be defrayed from account number 3-3-20-12-7901, General Capital Budget, General Equipment Purchase, -PW. Moved by Councillor Le Boutillier, seconded by Councillor Turgeon-Roy. On the matter, no question? Mr. Godet. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just one question. I mean, we are going to replace a big generator and a small generator with a much larger one. So what are we going to do with the 2 others? Are we just replacing them? We're going to keep them. First of all, thank you. Hello tonight. Now we're going to keep them. We have one that is mobile and can be used in emergency situations, and the smaller one, we can decide where to put that. But once this is all done, we'll know what we can put in the operations center, and we will try to look when it comes to emergency operations. We'll have to see where we should have that generator in case there's a power outage. We're simply moving them around according to the needs of each building, and the needs for each building are different, but we're keeping them. Yes, thank you. Mrs. Le Boutillier. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And this is a matter that it kept coming up because in the past, due to the budget, we had eliminated a generator in one case, and we were wondering if ever something happened. But you've answered my question there. Just to be sure, the one that's mobile, the Uniplex can't have it at this time. That will be part of the analysis that we're going to be undertaking over the next few weeks. Thank you. Thank you. Any other questions? Those in favor of the resolution will say yay. Those against will say nay. Motion carried as presented. 10.5.2, Mr. Melanson. Well, this is a proclamation for National Public Works Week, and so the municipalities, this is a national movement, and we are going to have all sorts of activities set up by staff starting over the weekend with an exhibit near the market for those who like to get into larger vehicles or operate large equipment, young people and not so young. I mean, I want to also say that there are activities during the rest of the week, as well as an open door and other visits here and there. For those who've never seen this, it's very interesting at the Operations Center. It'll be all day until 7 p.m. On Thursday, and also there will be an open doors at the industrial site. So activities will be there. Staff want to welcome the public and present another side of the municipality that not everyone has a chance to see. So there's the proclamation for National Public Works Week. To read this, Mr. Lantagne. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. that the City of Dieppe Municipal Council hereby declares the week of May 21st to 27th, 2023 as National Public Works Week and encourages all residents to join municipal representatives in partaking in activities and ceremonies designed to recognize the work of our Operations Department employees who are responsible for, among other things, public works in all areas of operational activity, such as municipal buildings, recreational facilities, parks, green spaces, and water and sewer systems, as well as to recognize the substantial contributions they make to our municipal health and welfare. I move, Mr. Mayor. Moved by Councillor Lantagne, and it's been seconded. Those in favor will say yay. Those, okay. Okay, it took a little time, it took a little while, but there we got it. Those who are against, carried as presented. Now, item 10.6.1, a Planning Advisory Committee recommendation concerning the subdivision. And so this is the recommendation for the creation and location of Origin Street, the extension and location of Jenica Street, and the extension and location of Murray Avenue, as well as the location of public land for public purposes. And this was done with the Planning Advisory Committee, and so we have these elements to be passed with Quest Capital Incorporated. So to read this resolution, Councillor Boutillier. Okay, that Council accept the Planning Advisory Committee's recommendation relating to the acceptance of the Quest Capital Incorporated subdivision amending tentative plan, which provides for the creation and location of Origin Street, the extension and location of Jenica Street, the extension and location of Murray Avenue, as well as the location of land for public purposes. As proposed by Councillor Boutillier, seconded by Councillor Thibodeau. On the question, Mr. Lantagne. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Given the different interventions tonight and the concerns presented by the people, I would suggest that this recommendation be tabled for reassessment. I mean, it's not the project himself, but concerning these streets, there was a request to see if we could, and I don't know how this would change things, but see if we might be able to perhaps eliminate Jenica Street. I don't know if something can be done, but I think this should be thought about. We would need a resolution to that effect. Well, I would propose move that. I move that the decision concerning point 10.6.1 that be tabled to the next meeting to reassess the requests made. Could somebody second this? Seconded by Councillor Turgeon. So on this question, okay, Mrs. Turgeon-Roy. Okay, it's the same thing. Yes, it was the same type of proposal. Thank you. Mr. Thibodeau. Inaudible. Here we're talking about 700 units up to 2,000 units, etc. I'm not sure what kind of total we could put there. Are there any representatives of the developer who could talk to us? Thank you, Mr. Mayor and members of council. Generally, when we approve a developed subdivision plan, we don't have the details of how many units there are. We take a look at what is allowed for density in the zoning plan, and so we don't have an exact number. We just want to confirm the uses that are allowed on that property. And it's mostly for up to multi-family units. We can go up to so many meters high. And for the zonage, it's or the zoning is for high density residential area. And this is the element that has to be looked at when we want to know how many units would be allowed. We don't have an exact number for tonight, but wouldn't that be information to have before we decide to make the roads narrower? Because it seems to me that given the number of cars that could go that way, that could have quite an impact. When it comes to the how wide the streets are, this matter was we presented a a cut a sideway cut for this so that we would be elements included in the street, and this was added presented to the planning advisory committee, and it's also in your package. It was supported by different services, saying that we might we would that an easement going from 25 meters to 21 meters would be acceptable, and this was accepted by the planning advisory committee.
Aujourd'hui, c'est effectivement la localisation.
So what we need to look at, or what the council has to, is the location of Origine Street, the name of the street, the extension of Janica and Murray, and the location of the land for public purpose. So if we agree to all that, do we have to agree to the entire package together, or can we separate things? Well, it becomes, it's a complex thing because the developer has to be consulted in any changes that we want to make. So we need the agreement if there are major changes to the subdivision plan. Now, if the council wants to table this, to table the proposal, to look at different solutions, we'd have to sit down with the promoter to look at different scenarios, and there would have to be an agreement. But we could present to council, but then we'd have to go back to the PAC committee for an official recommendation. So ultimately, the decision is the council's. You have three possibilities here: either to accept the resolution that is presented in your package as is, or to table it and to give us some direction on what you want us to do with it, or the third scenario is to reject the resolution with a rationale that is clearly spelled out. All right, I have another question then. What were the criteria that were used for the location of the land for public purposes? Were there specific criteria that were used? Well, the criteria that are presented, staff look at the plans that are available to them. And then there's also a negotiation, a discussion with the promoter. So this land belongs to the developer, and the municipality tries to find a location. Maybe not ideal, but that is recommendable or acceptable for the needs of the municipality and future needs of the area. Now, the location at this point has been identified on the preliminary plan. They seem to, and it seems to meet the requirements of the various documents of the city. I know that there was mention made of that somebody said that the land for public purpose was originally located along the border of Bouchard Street. So I think 2 years ago, there was a design plan that was presented to council through a request for a rezoning request on for a small parcel of land on Key Street, and that was part of the overall project that was part of that rezoning application. And at that time, we'd asked the developer to provide more context. We wanted to understand why that specific piece of land was why they were asking for that to be rezoned. So we asked the developer to provide a design plan. And at the time, the land for public purpose or the buffer zone was illustrated as running along the limit of Bouchard Street. But at the end of the day, it was a design plan, and it was to deal with the rezoning application for that small piece of land on Keith Street. So it wasn't debated at the time. So that's basically my answer to your question. All right. Well, Your Worship, I think we heard some compelling arguments from residents tonight, and there are things that we need to look at if possible. So in that case, I will be voting in favor of tabling the resolution. Next speaker, Councillor Godette. Thank you, Your Worship. I just have a question. On page 174, there's an analysis by the fire department, and they talk about 3 accesses needed. So Keith, Dieppe Boulevard, Murray, and Janica. Why could we not? Could we remove Janica? I think that's why there needs to be at least 3. Well, the fire department is not here tonight, so that's when I said the option of tabling this. That's why I said that. Janica Street was already identified, so we'd have to talk to the head of to the chief, the fire chief, to see if we make changes, what would the impact be? And unfortunately, we don't have the evening or the answer here tonight. Okay, well that's just I just read here that 3 streets were required, so. Well, and I'm speaking from experience here. To give an emergency access for Bouchard Street residents, I think that Bouchard Street is not a big street, but it's always important to have an alternate if something happens on the other entry street. The alternative was to have a second access point, which was Janica Street. So that's why we'd have to talk to the fire department to see if that information is complete. All right, thank you. All right, Councillor Boutier, thank you, Your Worship. I'm not going to answer ask questions that have already been asked, but I'm in favor of tabling the resolution based on the information provided. But I have a question with regard to the information. In our development plan, when we have transition zones, it's not easy to go and get bylaw Z10 because it's they're all listed there. But what are the dimensions currently between zones? So the transition or the buffer zone is what? How big is that? Well, that'll depend on physically what's being proposed on the adjacent line and land, and even the land along Murray, because there are different zones. There's a CM. So the buffer zone in terms of buildings, if there's a building that is, and I think it's more than 10 meters. It has to be located 10 meters from the property line. And we're talking about the height. So a 10-meter high building has to be 10 meters from the property line. So if the building is shorter, it can go up to 6 meters from the property line. And there are landscaping requirements as well. You have a bylaw on tree cover in front of you that might add to the landscaping that's already required by the zoning bylaw. And when there's parking lots or parking spaces that are developed in a low density, we will require a fence for aesthetic reasons, visually, and so there's certain things that are already part of the zoning bylaw. Is it perfect? That's, I think, something that could be debated, but those are tools that we have, that we have at our disposal. All right. Well, my question is, in R4, in our development plan, do we take into account different zones for the buffer zone? Well, in this case, we look at the type of unit. So if it's an R4 and we have a house along Bouchard, there would be requirements in terms of the backyard. But if we're talking about accommodating building or bigger and higher buildings, so more than 10 meters in height, there would have to be a setback of at least of 10 meters. All right, thank you. Councillor Godbout. Thank you, Your Worship. I am leaning towards tabling the resolution too, or the proposal rather. Now, in terms of your question, in terms of directives, I think, first of all, I want to say that we place a lot of trust in the recommendations, and that's why we want to have your thoughts on the points that were raised tonight. And one that I want to come back to tonight, and that wasn't mentioned, and I say this often, but I think the challenge that we have here is that we have a developer that we appreciate, and we appreciate having developers that, this developer is coming with a big project that we haven't necessarily seen, and I'm trying to kind of imagine the quality of life in that project. What will the quality of life of residents that live in that project? And when we're working with a 2014 park and leisure plan, that it doesn't fit. So, as citizens, we have to say, what do we want to offer in terms of quality of life to our residents? And in a project like this, we've had people in Dieppe, single family dwellings who have moved towards areas that have become more urbanized, but for me that concept is still not clear. So we have a plan, we have a street, but I have a difficulty establishing a reference point when we talk about land for public purpose. So I have difficulty understanding whether the land for public purpose is appropriate. What is the life of a family with children going to look like? What do they need to be able to support the child in their development? So I can't conceptualize it. And in part because we're densifying the city quickly and we're trying to catch up. So I would like to have your thoughts on that concept, the idea of land for public purpose. What types of land for public purpose do we need as we progress as a city towards densification? And maybe it's not an easy question to ask, but I would have liked to have heard your ideas, like where are we going with that? So in addition to the other points, my question was, what does land for public purpose look like in a densification project? Because I don't think our master plan for park and leisure has kind of taken densification into context, and we won't be able to have a new plan, but I would like to have kind of an idea of what that could look like. All right, we've taken notes here. All right, I think that is everyone who wanted to speak. So let's vote on Councillor Lantang's resolution. All those in favor signify by. Oh, I just wanted to. I wanted to make a clarification. So for us to be able to be productive, I would like to know. So what I've taken down as notes is that, okay, the future of Janica Street, we talked about the qualitative aspects of the land for public purpose, but is there also the question of the location of the street? So we're talking about different scenarios. So we can maybe, to address the questions raised by residents today, but just know that this exercise has to be done with the promoter, or the developer rather, and the scenarios that will be proposed won't necessarily be ideal. So it's a long-term exercise. We have to work with the developer. So just so you know. And I would add too that we have to think of public safety as well. So we'll look at it, but and then there's the context of reality as well. What is realistic? Ms. Spencer, you wanted to add something? Yes. Well, I just wanted to make the point that the in-depth analyses were done on what was given to us by the developer. So the information in your package is based on what was submitted. So if we're going to propose something different, we'll have to restart all those analyses. Right. Okay, I think we've had all the discussions that I think there's I see two other people want to add something, but I think we have an idea of where we want to go. I think we're going to continue and go on to the vote. So as moved by Councillor Lantang, seconded by Councillor Turgeois, all those in favor of the resolution signify by saying aye. Opposed say nay. So the resolution has been adopted as presented. All right, that brings us now to 10.6.2 PAC recommendation. So this is in regard to Melançon Road, and so we're bringing this recommendation with 5 conditions that are listed in the resolution. So you've read through it, and so we're asking for the council's approval tonight. So who wants to read the resolution? Councillor Boudreau? The council repeal the resolution adopted on March 28th, 2022, entitled PAC Recommendation Conditional Use Zoning Bylaw PID 0098-7594 portion, Melançon Road, and adopt the following. The council accept the recommendation made on May 17th, 2023 by the Planning Advisory Committee pertaining to the application for a conditional use to permit the development of 2 multiple unit dwellings. That council further accept that this application be subject to section 59 of the Community Planning Act pursuant to the following terms. One, that a subdivision plan is approved and registered to address the property line reconfiguration affected by said application. Two, notwithstanding subsection 3.11 of zoning bylaw Z10, 2021, the placement of two multiple unit dwellings and landscaping must be conducted while being substantially in conformity with the site plan entitled NB Housing 630 Chemin Melanson Road and the conceptual drawings. Three, notwithstanding term number 2 mentioned above, the elements pertaining to the tree study and the recommendations determined by the Environment Department Director must be respected. 4, unless specifically excluded from this list of terms, all other provisions of the current zoning bylaw apply. 5, no term of this resolution prohibits or limits, one way or another, the developer to apply for a variance pursuant to the provisions set out in the Community Planning Act. That Council proceed with the first and second readings of Bylaw Z10 2017-7. So moved. Moved by Councillor Boudreau, seconded by Councillor Lantaigne on the question. No questions. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, say nay. The motion carries, or resolution carries as presented. 10.7.1 now. The reading of this item, Councillor Thibodeau. Thank you, Your Worship. That Councillor name the following individuals on the Paul Chasson for a 3-year mandate ending June 1st, 2026. Angela Spencer, representative of staff for a 3-year mandate. So moved. Moved by Councillor Thibodeau, seconded by Councillor Godette on the question. No questions. Those in favor of the resolution signify by saying aye. Opposed, the resolution carries as presented. Item 11, municipal bylaws. Gerard has a presentation following the questions that were asked by the people at the public housing. So he's going to present some clarification on the issue. Thank you. All right, well, the objective here before we go to final reading is to provide a bit of clarification to the discussion that we had 2 weeks ago. And the clarifications are with regard to the definitions that are within the bylaw, and also to so that council can make a decision on the information that it has, but also to make a distinction between a unit that's rented on a short, medium, or long term, and with the other definitions already that are listed. So to make a distinction between those terms and to distinguish that from the bylaw that you could be potentially adopting. So I hope that my presentation will provide some clarification. So this is a text amendment to the zoning bylaw Z10. And the idea is to permit the use of an accessory dwelling in conjunction with a semi-detached dwelling in the RHM and R3 zones. So here you see a slide that illustrates the different forms of housing. So there is a single family dwelling at the left, and then a semi-detached house or houses or units. And then the semi-detached dwellings with accessory suites, and that's what's being dealt with in the bylaw, so and so forth. So within, there's a specific definition of a dwelling unit. So here we're talking about one or more habitable rooms designed for exclusive use by one or more individuals, occupied by them or intended for their use as an independent and separate dwelling, provided with its own cooking and washroom facilities and bedrooms. So again, here, we have different versions of it within a single family dwelling, a semi-detached dwelling, townhouses, and a multi-unit dwelling. So the accessory dwelling can be found in different types of units. Now, accessory dwelling, and here we have a definition, is a secondary unit that is accessory to the principal dwelling unit, and that, except in the case of a garden suite, is located in the same building as the principal dwelling unit. So it's an accessory dwelling is allowed within a single family dwelling, as we see on the right. And what's being proposed in the bylaw is to allow an accessory dwelling within a semi-detached unit. So there are restrictions that are already within the bylaw. So an accessory dwelling cannot represent more than 35% of the building itself. And so this would apply both to the semi-detached unit with accessory dwelling, as in a single unit dwelling. There's a definition within there are different definitions within the bylaw as well. A bed and breakfast. What that means is a single unit dwelling where accommodation and meals are offered to the traveling public. So it's a specific definition. So an accessory dwelling is not necessarily considered to be a bed and breakfast. We also have rooming houses, which are dwellings where the owner provides single rooms for compensation to persons other than the owner's family, or employees of the establishment. So again, this is a secondary use in conjunction with a permitted single unit dwelling. A definition of hotel, that's another component. A commercial building, I'm not going to read the entire definition, but hotels are found within commercial areas. So rental of a dwelling or accessory dwelling on a short, medium, and long-term basis. So the zoning law does not regulate short, medium, and long-term rentals. So somebody can rent their single unit family for a weekend or for a month. The zoning bylaw does not regulate that. So short, medium, and long-term rental of a dwelling can take place in a single unit, semi-detached, townhouse, or multi-unit setting. So again, the rental of a dwelling or accessory dwelling on is a secondary residential use, or sorry, an accessory dwelling unit is a secondary residential use, and a person business can rent a dwelling, including an accessory dwelling, to a person family for an indeterminate period of time. So I just wanted to add that. So this is an exercise. If we want to have something that regulates short or medium or long-term dwellings, that would be a separate exercise. We would need to conduct an in-depth analysis of the question, and we'd have to do consultation with the province as well to see what tools would be available to us to regulate that form of development. I've had discussions with my colleagues at the City of Moncton. These are, we could work professionally with the City of Moncton and other municipalities throughout the province who have kind of looked at that question. But I hope that added a bit of clarification to the discussion that we had a few weeks ago, and that you can make a decision with the information that is before us. So I'm open to answering questions if you have any. Are there any questions from councillors? Councillor Godbout. Microphone, please.
Juste un remerciement pour la clarification.
Okay, just thank you for the clarification. I think it is useful. I think the whole question of bed and breakfasts and short, medium, long-term rentals, I think that's a question that we have to work on before we have a problem. You know, I think in the many priorities that we've given you, it shouldn't be on the top of the list, but I'm happy to hear about the collaborations that you mentioned, and I think that's exactly what we have to do. Thank you for the clarification. It makes me feel much more comfortable voting on the bylaw this evening.
Madame Leboutier.
Oui, ben, encore une fois, la même chose. Pareillement, ça clarifie, mais ça veut dire que nous, en tout cas, je ne peux pas parler pour tout le monde, mais c'est quelque chose que je veux à moyen terme au moins qu'on regarde.
I think this is something that we need to look at the short term. We have to look at that, but at least put restrictions on the short term rentals. You know, for safety reasons for all our residents. Thank you. I don't see anyone else. Any other questions?
So we can go with a first reading. Okay, in full readings of the Mrs. Goodboo. Okay, given all of the questions I've asked, then now I have to read it. Oh well. Okay. As seven. Okay, bylaw Z10 bylaw to amend the City of Dieppe zoning bylaw. The Council of Dieppe, under the authority vested by the Community Planning Act 2017, and acts as follows: that Z10 2021 enacted on the April 12th, 2021, and filed in the Westmoreland County Registry Office as number 41173189 on April 15th, 2021. Okay, is hereby amended as follows. Paragraphs of 5.31b and c are repealed and replaced with following. B, subject to 3.26, one of the following secondary uses in conjunction with the permitted single dwelling unit. One, neighborhood care center. 2, garden suite. 3, bed and breakfast. And 4, rooming house. C, subject to section 3.26, one of the secondary uses in conjunction with the permitted single unit dwelling or a permitted semi-detached dwelling. I, home occupation. I, accessory dwelling. Paragraphs 5.41b and c are repealed and replaced by the following. B, subject to section 3.26, one of the following secondary uses in conjunction with a permitted single unit dwelling. I, neighborhood daycare center. 2, or I, garden suite. 3, I, bed and breakfast. IV, rooming house. C, subject to subsection 3.26, one of the following secondary uses in conjunction with a permitted single unit dwelling or permitted a semi-detached dwelling. I, home occupation, and I, accessory dwelling. This is proposed in the first reading. Proposed by Councillor Goodboo, seconded by Councillor Boudreau. On the question, no question. Those in favor of the resolution will say yay. Those against, nay. So, bylaw Z-10, modifying the zoning bylaw, has been adopted in third reading after being read completely. And now we must move on to third reading by title only. Won't be as hard. Thank you, Mr. Ayers. So the title I propose that they be read by title only. Bylaw Z-10 to bylaw to amend the City of Dieppe zoning bylaw. Thank you for the correction. So once again, Conseil Thibodeau seconds on the matter. No matter. Those in favor will say yay. Those against will say nay. And that's carried. And now, that's it for now. Well, there's point 11. Okay. Z10, Z-10, 2021-7, to amend the City of Dieppe zoning bylaw, but only by title. Councillor Boudreau. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So bylaw Z-10, 2021-7, bylaw to amend the City of Dieppe zoning bylaw. I move that be read by title only, first reading. Conseiller Lantang seconds it. Councillor Lantang seconds it. Question: those in favor of the first reading will say yay. Those against will say nay. So bylaw Z 10 2021-7 has been adopted in first reading. Now the second reading by title only. Councillor Boudreau. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So bylaw Z-10 2021-7, bylaw to amend the City of Dieppe zoning bylaw has been moved in second reading. So Councillor Boudreau moved to first reading, second reading, Conseiller Delio, or Boudreau was in favor. So seconded rather. So those in favor will say yay. Those against will say nay. So Z-10 2021 has been passed in second reading. So this simply brings us to the notices of motions. Are there any? Oh, excuse me. Oh, thank you for reminding me. It's going to be a very long night. So bylaw C-1 2023, a bylaw relating to traffic and parking in the city of Dieppe. So Councillor Boutillier, would you like to do the first reading? Okay, so bylaw C-1 2023, a bylaw relating to traffic and parking in the city of Dieppe. It has been moved by Councillor Boutillier, seconded by Councillor Turgeon-Roy. Question? None? In favor, please say, or rather, bylaw C-1 2023, concerning a bylaw relating to traffic and parking in the city of Dieppe. First reading by title only, say yay. Those against will say nay. So in first reading, it's been accepted. And now the second reading, right away. Councillor. Okay, so bylaw C-1 2023, a bylaw relating to traffic and parking in the city of Dieppe. I moved in second reading. So it's proposed in second reading by Councillor Boutillier, seconded by Councillor Turgeon-Roy. So on this matter, questions? None. Those in favor for bylaw C-1 2023 in second reading by title only, please say yay. Those against will say nay. So C-1 2023, bylaw relating to traffic and parking in the city of Dieppe has been passed or carried in second. Now, notice of motion, there's been none. I have an answer to a question of Councillor Lepoutier, or Councillor Ving. Yes, before we go to notices of motion, I'd like to know what the procedures are. I'd like to better understand the procedure for notice of motion. I am not really the expert in this matter.
Moi, j'ai rien ici.
Ouais, je l'ai. Merci, je te regarde ça. C'est vers la fin, ça, d'habitude. Excusez, j'avais pas prévu de regarder ça ce soir. Je ne veux pas vous induire en erreur.
Je ne trouve pas.
Council is discussing what the procedure is for notices of motion.
Alors, de mémoire, on va laisser Stéphane poursuivre sa recherche.
So we're going to let Stéphane do his research. We have to identify the matter, have a brief explanation. It's not to be debated tonight. And then there's a procedure to follow to submit the motion that you want to present in a future meeting. So I'm just going by memory here, but we can make sure, I stand to be corrected. We'll have to make sure that what I'm saying is in fact accurate. Fine. Okay, we don't have them often. I think since I've been here, I think there may have been one. And if that's the way, I'd like to take a look at this. I mean, it's been many years where we've even mentioned it tonight. We're in a frame where things are defined, and I would like to truly look at the matter, perhaps not right now, but in the middle and long term, is to look at bylaw Z9 or Z10 concerning the buffer zone, and take a look at perhaps widening it and finding out what kind of types of houses there might be and the different types of zones, and over the past few years, better adapt it when it comes to large projects, that we look at it, and if it has to be widened, I would like to take a look at that and perhaps bring about a motion concerning this. Fine, we will work with you to make sure that that the motion be receivable as well, and then we can bring the discussion to council. So this brings us to comments and questions from members of council. I believe Mr. Lantaigne is the first at bat. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Okay, given the time, I simply want to wish everyone a good night. Mrs. Goodboo? Yes, good night to everybody. Mr. Turgeon-Roy? Yes, have a great week. Mr. Thibodeau? Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just have one thing. I went to the Boys and Girls Club's annual meeting, and in their annual report, I see that they're doing great things, and they've got great results, and given the services they give us, but we haven't received a written annual report. Does the city receive any of that? I think they're on the list to come and give us an update, and I think it will be in June. So yes, the AGM. Yes, there are things that we are requesting, that we're going to be requesting in the future. So we're going to see how that gives us our community areas. We want to get the information from all the groups, and so that make sure that everything is reported similarly. So we didn't receive an official report, and there were things that we were looking for that weren't necessarily in there. So we're going to try to make sure all of our community groups include those elements. All right, thank you. Thank you. Councilor Boudreau. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would like to thank my colleagues for putting their confidence in me, their trust in me, and making me the deputy mayor. I will certainly be happy to represent the city whenever the mayor is not available, and I will take the opportunity to grow in my role as councillor and learn more. I want to thank my predecessor, Ernest Thibodeau, for his years as deputy mayor, and I'm certainly happy to be part of an extraordinary council. Thank you. Thank you. Mr. Leboutillier. Yes, thank you. I will be short. I'll be brief. I just have a question that was brought to me over the past few weeks. I think it's been 2 years since we had a bylaw concerning boxes because we had trouble, for donations of clothing and such. And is it true that since we got that, we no longer have any boxes where clothes can be donated? I was wondering, are we too rigid? If we don't have any anymore, well, then why? And is there a way of, is that, are there fewer? Certainly there are fewer. I think that there are certain responsibilities that came with the way things were set up because there was really a problem before. So the matter has been brought up. We'll check and see. That's probably something we can add to the comments. See if anything is really different. And also, I know that I know there are also organizations now that are ready to go all the way to your place and get them. Yes, they've adjusted their way of doing things given the pandemic and everything. Yes, that's a good point. And also, I would also like to thank all the staff that are with Public Works for their National Public Works Week and for the activities. This takes time to organize, so please take part, have barbecues, etc. Thank you. Thank you. Councillor Godet. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have nothing to add. Fine. Okay, I just checked for notices of motion. It says that the proposer must present a motion concerning a policy at a future meeting. That's what it says. Is that the proposer or the mover will propose it at the next meeting, and then it can only be for procedural and policy issues. So it can be a short motion, and we could bring this up at the next meeting. Is that clear? All right. So have a great evening, everyone, and we'll see you next time.